So these are our kiddos, right? The class of 2026, those are our 8th graders. Every year when I go in to update and this presentation, the very first thing that I always get to do is change that class of number. And over the years that I've done it, knowing that I had a child in the class of 2026, that number just seemed to get closer and closer. And then actually typing it this year was a very strange sort of moment for me. So we like the kiddos to think about that graduation component. And then when they get on to high school, really how the high schools talk about them is as graduating classes. So it's important for them to be familiar with that number so they know that's them. I want to take a second and talk a little bit about activities that are coming up for the rest of the year, so you know some opportunities that are coming your kiddos' way. The first I mentioned a moment ago, so the 1st of November, all 8th grade students will get this information through science and social studies. Open enrollment, which we'll talk quite a bit about today. That deadline hits us on Friday, December 17th, so I want you to be aware of that deadline. January 11th or 12th, our kiddos will have an opportunity, I hope, if our COVID protocols stay the way they are right now, to attend a field trip to the Junior Achievement Finance Park. We have financial literacy standards that exist inside of our 7th grade social studies. Due to COVID protocols, we weren't able to offer this trip last year to 7th graders. So this year we'll actually, hopefully, take both our 7th grade class and our 8th grade class, one on the 11th and one on the 12th. We haven't figured out which is going which day yet. So that's why it says or. I don't know which class will go which day yet. Prior to that trip, there is a 6-lesson unit that will be taught through social studies, providing your kiddos information around financial literacy, meaning they learn about things like stocks and bonds. They learn what the stock market is. They learn how to balance a checkbook. They learn how to create a monthly budget. All of those kind of important life skill kinds of things. The other thing that tends to come as a benefit from this financial literacy unit is our kids gain a very shocking and realistic understanding of what it costs and how to live. So the cool thing about this trip is we take them to this finance park, which is actually located inside of the American Furniture Warehouse store on I-25 and 120th Avenue. The top level of that AFW is built to look like a small city. And we take the kiddos into the finance park. They each get an iPad with an avatar. And that avatar has a career and an education level, and they may or may not have a family. They might be a single person. It's different depending on kind of who they get. And then their job while they're at the finance park is to live a month as that avatar, pay all their bills, do all of those things. And the goal is to finish the day with money left in the bank. So helping them have a good understanding of what that's like every month, to adult. We hear every year, my favorite part on that trip is kids will say, my parents paid for that. Like they think food just, comes from places and electricity just magically comes from places. So learning all of that, I think, is really important for them. Hopefully they'll come home with a greater level of understanding and appreciation for what you do for them. February will begin their ICAP. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Late February, they will register for high school. It's usually the last full week in February is when they register. Every year except for last year, the way that has worked is the high schools come here for a couple of hours and they talk with the kids about registration. They give them all their registration materials. They get t-shirts to their high schools. It's a really cool thing for them. And then they bring all their registration materials home. You go through all of that with them, and then you actually physically return them to your high school the next week. So that first week somewhere in March. Last year, we weren't able to do that due to our COVID protocols. And so the high schools actually, we set up a time and they Zoomed into classrooms with the students, and we walked them through a virtual registration and online registration process. and it was fine. It worked out okay. It really wasn't the most ideal situation because the kids they don't ask as many questions. Most people don't. In this setting, in this Zoom setting, it's very weird for them to feel like they're shouting questions out at a screen. And so we hope to be able to offer it again in a more live setting. The kids just ask more robust questions and they leave feeling more prepared for that process. So hopefully it will look like that this year. That's hard for me to predict right now. Questions about activities? Okay. So the first piece that we should talk about is this component of open enrollment or school of choice. You'll sort of hear that referred to both ways. I know that you all at some level are familiar with open enrollment in school of choice. I know that because your kids go to school here. So Chappelow is no one's boundaried school, no one's home school. You'll hear it referred to both ways. We are 100% school of choice enrolled, meaning every single student who attends school here does so because their parent at some point in time submitted an application for them to attend school here through open enrollment. Meaning you said, no, thank you. I don't want to attend my boundaried school. I would like to attend Chappelow, and you submitted an application to be able to do that. Really, open enrollment is designed to be an avenue to opportunities that are provided at one school, but not another. So for us, for example, we are the Arts Magnet School, K-8 school in our district. We offer opportunities inside of the arts that other schools do not. So you chose to select those opportunities over attending whatever your boundary home school would have been. And those opportunities are unique to us. And so you utilized open enrollment to take advantage of them. The way open enrollment works is that once you accept a seat at a school that is not your boundaried school, that seat is yours, or specifically your child's, until you change your mind. So you say, you know what, actually, we would rather attend our boundaried school, or we're going to apply for school of choice to another school, at which point in time you give up your seat at Chappelow. We then typically fill your seat with a child off of the wait list. Or a natural transition point occurs. And because we are a K-8 school, our only natural transition point is between 8th grade and high school. So if you submitted an application for open enrollment before kindergarten, so your kiddo has been here since kindergarten, we accepted your child into kindergarten fully anticipating that they would stay with us until 8th grade. And so that seat is yours for as long as you choose to keep it, or until we hit the end of their 8th grade year and are now going to send them off to high school. In May, when your child is no longer an 8th grader at Chappelow, what will happen is our system, well, we call it a rollover. So our system would roll your child over to whatever their boundaried or home high school would be based on your current home address. And that is where they go to high school, unless you submit an application for open enrollment. If you submit an application for open enrollment and they're offered a seat at another high school and you accept it, same thing is true. That high school anticipates that your child will stay with them until they graduate. Okay, so that is the next natural transition point, is graduation. It requires an application. So either inside of this window, and sometimes you'll hear this November 1 to December 17 window referred to as a priority deadline window. And really what that means is anyone who applies inside of that, roughly 6-week window of time is given first option inside of seats that the high schools have available. You can still apply for open enrollment when the window is closed. So December 17th until school starts the next fall, you can still submit applications inside of our open enrollment system. Just know that anyone who applies December 18th or beyond is automatically placed on a wait list. Because the way it works is that we evaluate, I'll talk about us specifically, but the other schools work exactly the same way. Every year we evaluate how many seats do we have available at each of our grade levels, okay? So obviously our largest entry point is kindergarten, okay? We usually have roughly 70 seats to offer to kindergarten. And then we look at how many open seats do we have in other grade levels. So if you've been here for a while, you know that every year we ask you, do you intend to return to Chappelow next year? The reason we ask that question is that if you say, no, our family is moving to Iowa, we won't be back next fall. That's good for us to know, because now we know that seat is a seat we have available to offer inside of the open enrollment window, okay? So that's why we ask you those questions, is we're trying to determine how many seats are we gonna have to actually be able to offer. And then what we do inside of that window is we look at, okay, we're going to have 4 seats in 3rd grade for next year. We look at how many applications are in that open enrollment system, and everybody gets assigned a random number, and 1 through 4 we take and add to our 3rd grade for next year. So the high schools do the same. They look at how many seats do we have available to offer on open enrollment for our 9th grade class. That's how many seats we'll take. And once we're filled to capacity, then everybody else goes to a wait list. So when you submit, if you submit an application for open enrollment, there are a couple of things that are important for you to know when you submit that application. The first is it's important to know what your home school or boundaried school is. And so if you're not certain, I can certainly provide you that information. I'm also providing that information to 8th graders on Monday. So they're all going to get like a notes catcher sheet, and on their notes catcher sheets, there's a sticker, and it has their name and what our system believes to be their boundaried high school based on the address we have in Infinite Campus. So something that happens very frequently at Chappelow is, because we are not a boundaried school, we actually don't really care where you live. So if you were to attend any other school in our district, every year you'd be asked to submit a proof of residency. I know that you do get asked for that. So if you do that online registration process every year, you have to submit a proof of residency that asks for a current bill with your current address, right, that matches the address we have on file. An important thing to know is we at Chappelow, we literally never look at it, because it doesn't matter to us where you live. Your boundary to us is not relevant. We're a school of choice. That is all that matters to us, is you did this application process, were offered a seat and accepted it, and it's yours. Okay, that's it. That's all that matters to us. You could live in Greeley, you could live in Windsor, you could live in Fort Collins, doesn't matter to us where you live. So you'll submit that, but we never really look at it. So something that happens every year is I give that information to the students, and they look at it, and I'll have a kid say, Mrs. Fay, this doesn't make any sense to me. I could like literally jump my back fence to Greeley West. Why does this say Greeley Central? And I'll look up their address in Infinite Campus, and I'll read their address to them, and they'll say, I haven't lived there since like 4th grade. Cool. Okay. So then we just need to update your address, right? And so that boundaried school is accurate. So it's important first to know what your boundaried school is, because you may not need this process, okay? Your boundaried school might be exactly what you're looking for. The next pieces that are important to know is, let's say you know what your boundaried school is, but you really would like your child to attend a school that is not your boundaried school. So you are going to submit an application. Inside of that application, you'll be asked a whole bunch of questions. And a couple of things that are important to know are, do you currently have an older child who attends the school you want your 8th grader to attend, right? Do you have a kiddo who is a sophomore at Greeley Central, and you want your kiddo to attend Greeley Central with their sibling? One of the questions you'll be asked is, do you have a kiddo who currently attends the school to which you're applying? You want to be careful that you answer yes to that. One of the things that does weight an application and draw it up toward the top of the seats being selected is we like to keep families together. So if you have a sibling who currently attends that school, we want you to be able to have all your kids at the same place. Okay, so it's important that you answer that one yes. The other thing that is really important inside of that process is if you or your spouse works for Greeley-Evans District 6, if you are a district employee, you'll be asked that. That also weights your application closer to the top inside of that priority deadline. And they're going to ask you if you are applying for open enrollment because your child is interested in a specialized program. And so you'll have to answer yes to that if that's why you're applying to go to school there, and then indicate which specialized program is the one you're applying to. And so that's part of why we're doing this today, so that you know what the specialized programs are at the different high schools, so you know which one or ones, because you might choose more than one, that you want your child to participate in at that high school. So all of those things are important to know when you go to submit that open enrollment application. The other thing that's really important to know about open enrollment, and I know you all know this because of attending school here, but once you attend a school on open enrollment, you actually give up your right to school provided transportation. So your child would not be eligible for a school bus. So just know that you would still be transporting your kiddo to school every day, because they could walk if you live close enough, I suppose, or carpool, but the transportation would be your responsibility. Your kiddo would not be eligible for any district provided transportation. And then the last question I always get asked in this is, what happens if I get waitlisted? And really the answer to that right now is patience. Typically what happens is, like I said, they go through randomize. So they drop the siblings to the top, they drop the district employees to the top, they randomize the numbers, and then offer whatever number seats they have to offer inside of that capacity limit. And then they waitlist everybody else. Okay. And so middle of January, you'll get a notification that is offering you a seat or letting you know you've been waitlisted. And so around here, what happens most of the time is I'll know that has happened because my 8th graders are rolling in the door and they're talking to each other. I got my seat. Did you get your offer? I got my seat. Did you get yours? I got waitlisted. There's that whole conversation. And so a lot of times what will happen on that day is I'll have kids coming in the door. I got waitlisted. I got waitlisted. By lunch, the conversation is, I got an offer. I got an offer. Okay. Because what's happening is that we send out a mass set of offers. Families are going in, accepting and declining seats, okay? Because you'll get an offer, it'll have a deadline. And that deadline is like a week at the most. You go in, you accept or decline that offer. If you miss the acceptance deadline, so you get an offer and you don't accept it or decline it, it will be declined for you and that seat offered to somebody on the wait list. So it's really important to pay attention to those deadlines. So families are going in fast and furious, accepting, declining seats, and it's a rolling system. So if there are students who are waitlisted and families are declining seats, it's just pulling the next kid off the wait list and providing them with an offer. Okay, so it is a rolling system, just going like that. So that's why I say just be a little bit patient. We do ask that the high schools, the middle schools, ask that the high schools do not make changes so that they lock down the offering process a week before high school registration and a week after. That sort of allows the dust to settle. It allows us to register kids at one school, and then they'll reopen it and that rolling starts over again. So then what happens is let's say we had registered your kid at Greeley West and they were waitlisted at Greeley Central. They get accepted off of the wait list at Central. Usually you would make me aware of that because I don't always get that information. And then what I'm responsible for is making sure that your student now gets registered at Greeley Central. Okay, so that's a process. We manage it every year. It's not a big deal. Know that those wait lists are active until the school year starts. So you could be waitlisted until July. You could be waitlisted until 3 days before school starts, right? That is possible. So be prepared for that to potentially happen as time rolls on. So know that that's how that process works. Questions about open enrollment, how that process works? I'm going to take a water break.
Ms. Fay, is it possible to open enroll at more than one school, just on the off chance that, they don't get in?
Yeah, Jessica, that's a great question. So the system actually, to the best of my knowledge, unless they've changed it for this year, but traditionally the way it works is you can choose up to 3 schools. Inside of that process, you'll just rank them, which is your first choice, second choice, third choice. So yes, that is absolutely possible. Also know is that, let's say you get waitlisted at choice 1, but accepted to choice 2. If you accept choice 2 and then come off the wait list for choice 1, you can decline choice 2 and take choice 1. So there's always all kinds of movement that happens inside of that.
Great, thank you.
You betcha. All right. So this next part is really around the choosing what's best. Okay. And so the way that I will talk with your kiddos about this on Monday is that I will ask them to do something I've literally never asked them to do before, which is be selfish. Okay. I'm going to ask that they think about themselves and themselves only when they're thinking about what's going to be the best fit for them for high school. One thing I can tell you is very, very true about Chappelow is that because our kiddos, most of them, so we have a class of 78 this year, 63 of them have been together since kindergarten. And so what happens every year inevitably is that we end up with kiddos who realize for the first time ever that they've been in school, it's possible that they and their very bestest friend in the whole wide world are now going to go to 2 different schools. And that's really hard for our kids, understandably so. And so sometimes we'll have the experience where a student will decide what's important to them is being with their friends, and it's possibly more important to them than like the specialized program, right? So we talk about these specialized programs and, kid A is like, oh, that program, that sounds so exciting. That's totally my jam at Greeley West. Kid B, the best friend. Oh, that program's so exciting. That's totally my jam at Greeley Central. And then the 2 of them have this realization that those are 2 different places. Okay. And kid B goes, you know what? Maybe not so much my jam. I think I'm going to go over here. And the conversation we have is, that's fine. You guys make the decision that's best for you. And know that following somebody else's jam, right? Following somebody else's goals and pathways is not going to end up where you're going unless you're both headed that way on your own, right? So following somebody else's goals, you're going to end up where somebody else was going, not where you were going. And so if what we need to help you with is figure out how do you and your bestie still keep that close relationship, even though you won't see each other at school every day, that's a good problem for us to figure out how to solve, and it is solvable. But know that sometimes that happens in this process, and that it's possible kids will change their minds, right? They may do that. We may not be successful in convincing them right away that they should follow this path that they feel like is theirs. And they may at some point realize that they should have and want to make changes, and that's okay too. Okay, but be aware that that happens very, very frequently. But we want the kiddos to be able to really think about, what is it that really lights my fire? Okay, what is it that I want to do? And this school offers me exactly what I'm looking for. And it might be different than what other people who I love are doing and following. Okay, and we'll work our way through that process as the year goes on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the program options that exist at the different high schools. So something that's important for you to know, because I get asked this every year, Mrs. Fay, can't my kid just go to high school? Like just go and do high school? Absolutely, right? They can go to any of our high schools and just do high school, right? Have a very traditional high school experience. And that's awesome. And for some of our kids, that's all they need. For some of our kids, they're looking for something that is very specific and unique. And each of our high schools offers specific programs that are unique to those schools. And they are 4-year programs, meaning they require your kiddo to attend that school from the first day of freshman year all the way through graduation to be able to successfully complete that program. Those are the programs I'm focusing on today. Know that our district offers a wide variety of programming, okay? Actually, we offer 27 at last count, pathway programs that are divided into 11 academies. All of those pathway programs are specifically designed to help students develop their skills and abilities in the areas that are of interest and passion to them. Some of those programs, the majority of them actually, are 2-year programs, and they're designed to be completed inside of junior and senior year, when students have met the majority of their graduation requirements and when they likely have the ability to be a little more independently mobile, meaning maybe they can drive, right? Or you feel more comfortable with 30 minutes on a city bus, because it's possible in those 2-year programs for a student to do the majority of their day at one school while going to another school for a couple of hours a day to complete classes that are unique inside of a certain program. So know that the majority of those programs are 2-year programs. I'm not talking about those programs today, but I will be sending home with your students a listing of those programs, where they exist, all of that. So that's something you'll want to be looking for on Monday when they come home from school. The ones we're going to talk about today are those 4-year programs. Those are the only ones I'm talking about. So it's really kind of a very small nest of programs that we're talking about today, because they are 4-year programs, and because I want to make sure that you know they're 4-year programs, and that in order for your child to successfully complete them, they do need to attend that specific high school all 4 years. So I'll start first with talking about the unique programs that exist at Greeley Central High School. Greeley Central houses the grades 9-12 strand of the Arts Magnet program. We house the K-8 strand. So if your kiddo has really loved that Arts Magnet experience while they've been here at Chappelow, and they would like to finish out that experience, Greeley Central would be the best way for them to do that, because their Arts Magnet strand and our Arts Magnet strand align quite nicely. One thing that they'll be asked to do is select an area of focus. So they'll be asked that when they apply to the program, but they don't 100% have to commit to it until freshman year is over. They do provide them the opportunity to kind of explore and dabble a little bit to make sure that what they think is their focus area is the one that they really want to commit to. And those focus areas are shared with you here on this slide. It is possible for students to complete more than one focus area. So we've certainly sent kiddos off who were torn between focus areas. And if their focus area is pretty similar, meaning like I can't decide between drawing and painting and ceramics and sculpture, for example, or I'm not 100% sure, do I want to do acting, or do I want to do like acting and choir, right? So some of those things are a little more performance-based as well. Have very similar requirements to complete both focus areas. There's overlap in the program requirements. And so completing both of them is not complicated. They can complete 2 focus areas that are very different from each other. That just requires a little bit more creative planning in terms of their scheduling as they get older, where there's not going to be a lot of overlap. And so their very specific electives scheduling will just need to be done very carefully as they get older to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of both focus areas. It is doable, it's just complicated, and it's important to know that it will require some attention to make sure that that's being done appropriately. So like if they're, this happens sometimes, like I really want to do drawing and orchestra. Okay, well, there's not going to be a whole lot of overlap between those two. And so helping them know, okay, these are the requirements for drawing and these are the requirements for orchestra, and how are you going to get all of that done inside of your school schedule. Arts Magnet does require an application. It's the last couple of years has been an online application, and it usually opens somewhere inside the open enrollment window, usually toward the beginning of December. I typically recommend to my students that they wait until they know they've been accepted before they complete the application. but they don't have to. If they want to complete it ahead of time, they can. But I typically ask them to wait till they know for sure. And then it's open all the way through the registration process. So usually through the middle of March, that application is open for them to submit. There is a little bit of an essay that goes along with it, and they have to provide a teacher's name and email address, where then the director of the program, her name is Chrissy O'Connell Black. Chrissy will actually then email that teacher a form that they fill out as a teacher recommendation form. And so I'll work with the kiddos through that. How do you ask a teacher for a recommendation? We work our way through that process as the year goes on, so that they are able to get what they need by a certain deadline, without walking up to a teacher and being like, I need you to do this for me, and it's due tomorrow, which doesn't always turn out so good. So I want to make sure that they know what's expected of them and how to ask their teachers for that. And so that one specifically has that kind of application that is tied to it. The next program is the Health Sciences Academy. This program is really designed for students who are thinking about a career in human healthcare. So if your kiddo wants nothing more than to be a large or small animal veterinarian, that is awesome. This is not that program for them. I've got one, but it's not this one. And so this is really designed for any of our kiddos who are thinking about some kind of career in human healthcare, from being a doctor to a nurse to an EMT, a paramedic, anything like that would fit nicely inside of this program. The really neat thing, in my opinion, about this program is the internship program they have aligned with NCMC. And so inside of a student's junior and senior year, they have the opportunity to go spend part of their day. They walk over to NCMC, which is obviously right next door to Greeley Central. They walk over there and they get to intern and shadow and work with folks who do for a living what they think they might want to do. And so we talk about what a cool opportunity that, you could maybe shadow an ER doctor and get that knowledge of, is this a good fit for me, before you make a big commitment to something like medical school, to get to the end of that and go, actually, I don't think this is what I think it is. And I don't think I want to do that. That's not a great surprise. So knowing that ahead of time is, I think, a really cool opportunity for our kiddos. That one also has an application. It's traditionally been a paper application, and it's really very simple. There's no teacher recommendation associated to it. It's like, why do you want to attend the Health Sciences Academy? So it's a pretty simple process. That one we actually get with their registration material. So they would get that in February and turn that back in with their registration materials. And then there's classes they would obviously register for that indicate their interest in that program. The last program is that exists at Greeley Central that is a unique four-year program is the Advanced Manufacturing Program. This one is actually pretty new. This is its, I think, second, maybe third year in existence at Greeley Central. So it's still in the early stages, kind of getting off of its feet stages. And their big dream and big hope for this program as it continues to build out is really in the area of robotics. So students who are particularly interested in some sort of career that would involve that manufacturing, that building, that robotic understanding. And we certainly have some of those students whose minds work creatively like that, where this is of interest to them. That is available to them there at Greeley Central. It's also going to house an information technology unit, which is essentially computers and computer sciences. But it appears from the way the program designers talk about it is that really their big hope is around that robotics component. A cool thing inside of this program is their association to Vestas. So Vestas has contributed heavily inside of this program and committed in a very cool way to hiring any students who complete this program upon high school graduation, and allowing them above that entry level kind of job access inside of a large scale manufacturing company. which I think is a really neat opportunity for students who have that kind of interest and that kind of level of manufacturing, robotics, that kind of thing. Currently, there is no application for the advanced manufacturing program. If that changes, I'll make sure that students are aware of it. But at this point in time, I don't anticipate that to change. I usually know that by now. They would just register for a certain set of classes when they register in February, which indicates their interest. You would also obviously indicate that in your open enrollment application if Greeley Central is not your boundaried school. So if Greeley West or Northridge is your boundaried high school, and your child would like to participate in one of these 3 programs, you will need to submit an application for open enrollment on their behalf sometime in that November 1st to December 17th window. And you would indicate that one of these 3 programs is the reason for that application, so that the high schools have an understanding of, yes, I would like a seat, and this is why, inside of one of these 3 programs. Questions about anything that exists at Greeley Central? Okay, moving on. So next I'll talk about Greeley West. So Greeley West offers these 4 unique programs. 3 of them are 4-year programs. One of them is actually a 5-year program, which is kind of cool. So the first one I'll talk about is International Baccalaureate. You'll also hear this referred to as the IB program. It is divided into 2 parts. So freshman and sophomore year are what you'll hear referred to as the MYP program. Really, the way to think about this is sort of like training wheels. Okay, so this is the training wheels for the end of the program, which is the last 2 years, the DP or diploma program. And the diploma program, any classes taken there are college level classes, and they are eligible for college credit. So if a student successfully completes classes inside of their diploma program, they'll have an opportunity to take an IB test associated to that content, and then they can take that score from that test to any 4-year college or university and exchange it for some kind of college credit. How much and for what depends differently between different colleges and universities, but all IB tests above a certain score are eligible for college credit. So one way I ask kids to think about this, and like I said, we'll talk more about ways to earn college credit in February, is IB is kind of like going to a restaurant and ordering something off the menu without making any kinds of substitutions. Okay, you can't take the cheese off, you can't add guacamole. Nope, you order exactly what's on the menu and that's what it is. And the whole program is like that, right? So all of their classes inside the DP program are college level classes. So if you're a student who's really great at like math and science, but not so great when it comes to like reading and language arts or social studies, half of your day is going to be very, very difficult, where the other half will be just great. So their other option would be AP classes or advanced placement classes. That's a little more a la carte. Okay, so AP is a little bit more like, going to your very favorite buffet restaurant and heading straight for the ice cream sundae station, right? You eat dessert first, okay? You have that opportunity in there to say, math and science is really my jam. So I'm going to take all the AP classes in math and science I can get my hands on, and I'm just going to take the regular stuff for language arts and writing and social studies, right? I don't need the challenge. I don't want the challenge. Challenge is too much for me. So they have the ability to pick and choose inside of AP classes. IB is not designed like that. It is an all-encompassing program where everything is designed to be that challenging. And it can be a lot. So sometimes I will have students come back and say, wow, IB has been really hard, Mrs. Fay. Like I really wanted to go play sports in high school And I had to work really hard to make myself a schedule where I could get all of my homework done and still play my sport or do a musical or play in the marching band or whatever that extracurricular component or components are for them. Finding that balance. Some of my students have come back and said finding that balance was really hard, and maybe I didn't do it as well as I had hoped I would, or I didn't sleep a lot junior year. I hear all of those kinds of things. We certainly have students who can manage that kind of challenge. We have some students for whom that kind of challenge maybe wouldn't be the healthiest thing for them to embark upon. So it's important to know what can your kiddo handle or not handle, and what's a good fit for them, personally inside of that. And that's of course something we can definitely talk about individually with you and your kiddo, and kind of finding that fit if that is something that's interesting to them. And IB is an awesome opportunity for kids who are really wanting a really challenging academic opportunity in high school. This is a special opportunity for them to be able to do that as well, and earn college credit while still in high school. There is an application that goes with IB. It's also typically online, and it typically opens inside the high school registration window, that kind of February-ish component. And I usually get that information like it's now open. You can tell your kids to go apply. And so when I know all of that, I'll make sure my students who have expressed interest in IB are aware that the application is open. They also frequently offer parent information meetings while the open enrollment window is open. And so as I receive that information, I'll make sure to pass it along as well. The next program is the Entrepreneurship Pathway. Greeley West actually refers to this program as the High School of Business, which I think is funny. And the cool thing about this program is it's designed for students who are thinking about a career in business. Really in any capacity, but specifically around small businesses, opening a small business, running a small business, maybe taking over a family business, and just learning about what does that involve and what does that take. They have some really cool connections throughout our community with all kinds of small businesses, and that changes a little bit year to year, but cool opportunities for kids to get hooked up with folks in our community who run a business, have successfully for years. And so kids can go see what that looks like, participate in that process, and have a really solid understanding of what it means to run and own your own business. There is no application for that program. They'll just choose a certain set of classes when they register. And if you have to apply for open enrollment, you would indicate that on your open enrollment application. The next one is the Ag Academy, or the Agriculture Academy. This one is also something Greeley West is actually rather well known for, is their ag program. I mentioned a little while ago, if your kiddo was interested in some sort of large or small animal veterinary career, this is the program for them. Okay, the animal and plant component of the program, the animal piece is all about animal care, large and or small animal care. We have a former Chappelow student who graduated 2 years ago, who went through that program because being a vet was what she had dreamed about for forever, and she has talked a lot about what a good fit it was for her. Ag mechanics is all that good stuff around, working in agriculture in some way, maybe taking over a family farm, all of that good stuff. And then the last one, the horticulture, plants and flowers, is what this program is about, which when Greeley West's rebuild is finished, I think will be especially cool, given the really beautiful greenhouse that they're building on site right now for that program. There is no application for this program. It is a set of classes that the kids will choose at registration to indicate their interest in that program. And the last one is P-TECH. And P-TECH is brand new. This is actually its very first year, right now this year, their very first year in the P-TECH program. And this one is tied to their construction management pathway. And so this one's designed for any kiddos who might be thinking about a career in construction. So being a general contractor, for example, would fit inside of this program. This one is a 5-year program. And the way this works is the students earn their high school diploma. They also earn an associate's degree from Ames in construction management. And so they do their 4 years of high school, they graduate, they walk with their class. And then if they need it, if they need that 5th year, they remain on as a student, a Greeley-Evans student. They don't attend any high school classes, they just attend their Ames classes to complete out that associate's degree. The cool thing is that because it's a 5th year and they're still enrolled as Greeley-Evans students, what it means is that we pay for it. The school district, the state of Colorado, pays for the books, tuition, fees for the students to complete out that associate's degree at Ames in their 4th year of high school and their 5th year of high school if they need that 5 years. Greeley West has said that there are students, if they are, really taking a full load and committed to it, could potentially complete the P-TECH program in 4 years, but they've got that 5th year there if they should choose to use it or if they feel like they need it. There is currently no application for this process. It is a set of classes that they register for at registration to indicate their interest in that program. So if your boundaried school is Greeley Central or Northridge, and any of these programs is interesting, then what you would do is you would submit an application for open enrollment to Greeley West inside of the open enrollment window and indicate that one of these 4 programs is your reason for application and interest. Questions about Greeley West or any of these programs? All right, let's talk about Northridge. Northridge offers these 2 unique programs. The first that I'll talk about is actually the second one. That's their STEM Academy, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math is what STEM stands for. They actually are fairly well known for their STEM program. They got some kind of cool slightly local news coverage around the programs they offer inside of STEM, and just a really kind of cool shout out like last year, maybe a year and a half ago, around this program. So that was fun to see for them because they do a really nice job inside of this program for our kiddos who are really engineering and mathematically talented. So the first academy inside of the STEM Academy is the Academy of Engineering. This is designed for any student interested in any kind of career in engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, doesn't matter what kind of engineering it is, they offer classes to support it. There are some unique math and science classes that are offered at Northridge inside of this program that are offered nowhere else, designed specifically for these students and their level of advancement through math and science. The second academy is the Academy of Information Technology. So it's computers, computer sciences, anything in that realm. And then the last one is a very general Academy of Math and Science. So for kids who's just math and science in general is their jam, and that's what they're interested in, that third academy is designed for them. There's actually 2 applications for this program, one to the STEM Academy as an overall, a very general application, and then each of the 3 academies has a unique component that's unique to them inside of that application. So the kids think it looks like 2 applications because it kind of is. One is an overall and then something specific to which of these academies do you want to participate in. That I usually also get at registration time, so usually February-ish, for the kids to complete and submit along with their registration materials. The last time we did one, which was 2 years ago, it was an online process. So I would speculate it's probably still an online process, but I'll know more about that if we send any kids to Northridge, which some years we don't. The second program is the Marine Corps Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC. ROTC is how you'll usually hear this referred to around the community. This is a leadership program that exists at Northridge. And they are very careful to say there is no expectation of a career in the military upon graduation. There's no expectation of enlistment. Your child will never be asked to enlist, will never be pressured to enlist. None of that exists inside of this program. Really, it's around leadership. That being said, over my time at Chappelow, we have sent, to the best of my memory, 3 students to Northridge specifically for this program. All 3 of those students chose that program because they were interested in a career in the military, because they had an understanding upon learning more about this program from the program, that it can be a fast track through officer school. So if your kiddo is interested in a career in the military, this could be a good fit for them in that capacity. But it's also important to know that if just learning more about leadership and being a positive leader is what your student might be interested in, this could be a really cool opportunity for them to do that. There is an application for that program, and it does require a teacher recommendation. Like I said, it's been a couple years since we sent a kiddo through this program, so I would want to just make sure all of that is still accurate and exactly how do they want that? Is it still a paper application? I haven't needed to have that information for a couple of years, so I'm not 100% sure, but I can find that out for any of our students who are interested. Questions about Northridge or the programs offered there? All right, the last program I'll talk about is actually a school. So Early College Academy is our 4th high school here in Greeley-Evans School District. Early College Academy is just like Chappelow in that they are 100% school of choice. They are no one's boundary school. Every single student who attends ECA does so because a parent submitted an application for them through open enrollment to attend Early College Academy. Some really cool things about ECA. So they are a small school. They've committed to remaining to be a small school. They do not take more than 100 students per freshman class, and they keep their class size right around 100 until graduation. They don't grow any larger than that. The reason for that is that they understand what they're asking students to do, and that is complete high school, complete all 4 years of high school, while simultaneously completing an associate's degree in Ames. So students who graduate from ECA do so with a high school diploma and an AA degree from Ames at graduation. That's all done inside of 4 years. They are enrolled at ECA in Greeley-Evans District 6 as a high school student. And at the same time, so as a freshman, they are enrolled at Ames as an Ames student. So they have that, what we call dual enrollment. Okay, they're enrolled at the same time in both of those schools. That is because the majority of their classes taught at ECA are taught by Ames professors. So they have to hold that dual enrollment, and that's how they earn both diplomas. So there's a big ask and some big consequences that come inside of that dual enrollment that I'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute. But because they understand at ECA that they are asking sometimes 14-year-olds to do college level work, they want to make sure that all of their students feel like they are adequately supported. So there's a lot of study hall opportunities with their professors, office hours offered, small group study sessions to make sure that students are progressing through that material successfully. That's why they've committed to remaining so small. So they make sure they're able to provide that specialized support. The other thing around it remaining so small is really just that they're able to support those students successfully. One thing that is challenging about ECA is it is not a typical high school experience. So they don't offer sports, they don't offer a marching band, they don't offer cheerleading or POMs or anything that we kind of think about as that traditional high school experience for students. So if your student chose to attend ECA and still wanted to play sports, they can. They just play them for whatever their boundary or home high school would be, like they do for us, because we don't offer sports, but our students play sports for whatever their boundary middle school would be. So it would look like that. That just requires some planning and organization on y'all's part to make that happen. The other thing that's cool is because they want their students to have as much fun as possible inside of how hard they're working, they really have more clubs and activities than you can shake a stick at. And they have said, you know, hey, if there's something you really want that we don't offer, put together a couple of friends to do it, find an adult to sponsor it, and we'll offer it, no problem. So they're very open to, you know, diversifying what they already offer for their kiddos to feel like they have those supportive relationships from adults. So the challenge inside of that dual enrollment is this. So if you submit an application for your student to attend ECA inside of open enrollment, before seats are offered, we all at the middle school level get a list from ECA. Here are all the students from Chappelow who have submitted an application to Early College Academy. Are there any students on this list you would not recommend attend ECA, and why? And sometimes I have to say, we would not recommend that that student attend ECA for this next reason very specifically. Let's pretend your student right now is struggling in 8th grade to keep caught up on work. You know, maybe they work really hard, but staying caught up is hard, or their organization skills need some work. They have a lot of missing assignments, whatever, right? So they're struggling right now in 8th grade. I will a lot of times say I don't think that ECA is a good fit for students like that for this reason. If they move on to ECA, and let's say freshman year they fail social studies, okay? So they're going to get an F on a high school transcript. They're also going to get an F on a college transcript, okay? And that has really big consequences. So let's pretend your student at some point wants to move on to a 4-year college or university. They will be required to submit transcripts of any college level work done. And once they do that, and that college or university sees that F that they got while they were a 14-year-old freshman, it can create the situation where they are not able to access federal financial aid funding, okay? They can be declined for financial aid funding from a federal level because of Fs on a college transcript, and or it could impact their ability to get admitted to that college or university. And so those are really, really, really big consequences for young kiddos, young teenagers to understand. And so we want to be really careful that we don't send a student into a situation where we are worried that will be the outcome of that situation. And ECA, if that happens, ECA is likely to probably coach that student to return to their boundary home school, their boundary high school, so that that doesn't continue to happen and just compounds the problem. So know that it is possible that we may say from a school level, maybe not a good fit. I will always tell students that I've done that, right? So I will have a conversation with them. Hey, I see you applied to ECA. I'm a little bit worried. Let's talk about why, right? So we'll talk our way through that. There might be really legitimate reasons for why they seem to be struggling this year that maybe wouldn't be true come high school. And so we can talk about that too. So just know there are some big consequences that I want to make sure you're aware of as you think through that process. But it is a really amazing opportunity for students who are looking for a specific kind of challenge when they head on to high school, which is really completing 2 years of college while completing 4 years of high school, and having all of that 2 years of college credit completed to then take it to a 4-year college or university and say, look, I've already done my first 2 years. And any state, Colorado state school, so CU, UNC, CSU, any of those schools will take that 2-year degree from Ames just as if that student had completed those 2 years on their campus. That is something that they have committed to doing. So it can be a really neat opportunity for kiddos to get that 2 years of college completed while in high school. And that's not books and tuitions and fees that you as a family are paying for. That's all paid for by the district in the state of Colorado inside of this dual enrollment program. Questions about ECA I can answer. Okay, So quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about ICAP, just because you'll hear your student talk about ICAP. ICAP is an individual career and academic plan by Colorado state law. It is required for students in grades 6 through 12. Due to some conflict between that Colorado state law and some federal law around what students under the age of 12 can disclose on a website. We don't start this in 6th grade the way sometimes other places do. We start ours in 8th grade when all of those students are old enough to do that. To go onto the site that we utilize for them to disclose personally identifiable information. It's designed to help them create a plan for high school and beyond, and it's unique to them. So it's based on their individual skills and abilities and interests. We'll start that for them in February, and then they'll finish it out in high school. And it will house all of their components, college applications, letters of recommendation, all of that exploring and practical work they do to plan for what lies beyond graduation, whether that's college or career, right? Whatever it is they decide they're going to do upon graduation. We'll do that using a web-based program called Naviance, and they could access it anytime. They could log into it right now. There's nothing in there, but they could, if they wanted to, log into that system. And as we begin that work this year, there'll be more and more inside of that profile, and then it'll be a really robust, beautiful thing once they're done with graduation, or once they're done with high school. Kids always ask why, Mrs. Fay, why do I have to do this? And the answer is we want to help you plan for your future. Okay, it's important to have a plan. Most of us, we didn't start having those conversations. I mean, the first time I remember somebody asking me about what I wanted to do when I graduated high school, I was a 10th grader. And I was like, well, I don't know, right? So we want to make sure that we're beginning to have those conversations at an early age. And so kids begin to think about, what do I want to do? What's interesting to me? What am I passionate about? What am I good at? As we move on and tying that skill and ability and interest and passion all together in what they choose to do for a living as they grow older. I always tell them, your parents like to know that you have a plan. I have yet to meet a parent who says to me, yes, Mrs. Fay, I want my 42-year-old living in my basement without a plan. I've never had that said to me in my 15 years as a school counselor. I suppose it's possible, but I've never heard that happen before. So your parents like to know you have a plan. And then I tell them, because it's required by state law and I have to. So that's the whys. All right, graduation. That's our last piece to talk about just quickly, so you have a little bit of an understanding of what the expectations will be, no matter where your child attends high school here in Greeley. When the kiddos do this with me on Monday, they actually all make a pinky promise to me that they will graduate. Or if they're on a rough track, their pinky promise also consents to me stalking them until they graduate. So nobody likes that. That's awkward for me. It's awkward for them. And so we talk about that on Monday. Please don't make me be awkward. That's weird. Graduation requirements. So starting with last year's graduating class, to receive a high school diploma, students not only have to meet a credit requirement, they also have to meet a readiness component in English and in math. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So credit requirements. So these are the credits that students need to earn through their coursework in order to graduate. They need 22 credits to graduate high school in this format. So they earn a half a credit per semester. So, or a full credit each year for each class. So if you think about, except for electives, ignore that one from what I'm about to say, but if you think about everything else, if you convert the word credit to year, you're pretty close, okay? So they need 4 credits of language arts, meaning they take language arts all 4 years of high school, 3 years of social studies, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, a year and a half of PE. That half a credit is actually a health class that's required for all freshmen to take. And then like a year's worth of PE. A lot of times our students will be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to take that much PE. But lots of things count as PE. So if they play sports, they can count that as PE credit. If they play in the marching band, if they cheer or POMs, all of those things they can use as PE credit. And then a smattering of electives depending on what they choose to take. If they enroll in an arts magnet program, for example, most of their electives will come from that program, all put together to earn 22 credits toward graduation. The next part around graduation is that piece I talked about in terms of readiness. And so I will also be sending home a sheet that looks like this about graduation requirements. And these two columns, these two boxes here, talk about those readiness components in English and math. And really what that means is an assessment. And so your student will need to successfully complete one of the assessments in each column, one in English, basically, and one in math in order to graduate. Most of the assessments listed here are things kids just encounter naturally through high school. They don't really have to go looking hard for any of these things. So for example, right now in April, all of our students take a CMAS. So their 11th grade year, their junior year, they won't take a CMAS. They'll take either an ACT or an SAT. It changes year to year, so I want to be careful to say one or the other. And that ACT or SAT can be used toward their graduation requirement. So let's say it's ACT, the year that they're juniors, and they take the ACT and they score an 18 on the English and a 19 on the math, they're done. They have completed their readiness components for graduation. Now all they need to do is make sure that they have all their credits in line and they're good to go, okay? If your student chooses to participate in the International Baccalaureate program, IB tests are on this list. If they choose to take advanced placement classes in high school, AP tests are on this list. So there's lots of ways they can earn that, they can meet this requirement. The other piece that is likely to be an option when our kiddos graduate is a capstone project in English and a capstone project in math. That is another option available to them. Our current plan is to have all the parameters for capstones in place by the graduating class of 2024. And so our kids, since they graduate in 2026, if we are successfully able to have all those parameters ironed out by that point in time, theoretically capstone would be an option for them. So we'll have more information on that the closer it gets and once all the details are ironed out for capstones. The last piece I just want to draw your attention to, and we'll talk about it more in February when we talk about how to earn college credit while still in high school, are these here requirements that are listed on in the box next to graduation requirements. And here stands for higher education admissions requirements, basically college. And so these requirements you see listed here, these are the requirements for any Colorado state school. So the CU school system, UNC, CSU, any of those schools, these are their admissions requirements. If your kiddo is thinking about staying in state for college and going to a private school, so DU or Colorado College, for example, those are private universities. They can do whatever they so choose for their admissions requirements. So these are not their admissions requirements. They're probably pretty close, but specifically they could have and may have a different, more specific admissions requirements. If your student is thinking about attending college outside the state of Colorado, these are also not the admissions requirements of any of those schools. So if your student is thinking about, attending my alma mater, the University of Southern California in sunny Los Angeles, I would suggest, this is what I will tell the kids, use the internet, right? I didn't have the internet 25 years ago when I was going to go to college. So use the internet. It's a great tool. Go Google whatever school it is that you think would be cool, right? That you're thinking would be fun. Go to their admissions page and see what their admissions requirements are. They don't hide them. They're very easy to find. You just want to go and figure out what they are. And the way we talk about this as the year goes on is good surprise, bad surprise. Okay, so I ask them when we do this on Monday, guys, you're going to go home from school today, and the greatest surprise you can possibly think of is waiting for you when you get home. What would that be? And they start shouting things out at me. Okay, so puppy usually is one of the things that gets shouted at me, right? I get home, there's the world's cutest fluffy little puppy waiting for me when I get home. Yes, absolutely. Cute, fluffy puppy, good surprise. Okay. Being a junior in high school and going, I think I might want to attend the University of Southern California. And I go online and I look at their admissions page and I realize they're going to require me to have 3 years of a foreign language in order to be admitted, and a very specific set of social studies classes, because sometimes that happens, right? They have to have a US history, World War II history, European history. They have to have specific kinds of things inside their admissions requirements. Now you're a junior and you've got like a year and a half of high school left. You took 1 year of foreign language, but you can't take 2 more before you graduate. That's a bad surprise. Okay, we don't want that kind of surprise. So go on now, see what that could be. Worst case scenario, you're going to change your mind and choose a different school, and you don't need those requirements. You don't need to know them anymore because you're not going to apply to that school. Well, that's okay. At least you knew what they were and you had created a plan to get there. So we want them to start thinking about, what do you think you want to do? Where do you think you want to go? So that as they're choosing classes, as they head into high school and throughout high school, they're doing it with that end goal in mind. If going to college is what they want to do. Not all kids choose to do that. That's okay. Not everybody goes to college, needs to go to college to do what it is that really lights their soul on fire. Okay. So, but if that is what your kiddo is talking about and what they think they want to do, more information is good information. It may be information you never need again, but it is good to have and not need than need and not have, or get and wish you'd had before, right? All of those, not the best possible situation for you or your student. Inside of this credit component, I also want to talk about credit that is earned while students are still in middle school, because we do have students who are currently taking high school classes while enrolled as a middle school student. So I have 78 eighth graders this year. By the end of this year, 18 of them will be eligible for some kind of high school credit in math. So I have 15 taking Algebra 1. All of those students, if they successfully complete both semesters with a C or better, will be eligible for 1 year of high school math credit by the time they're finished with 8th grade. I have 3 more who are currently taking geometry. They all had to take algebra already in order to be taking geometry. So by the time they're finished, they would be eligible for 2 years of high school math at graduation. And so if you remember back to where we were before, they need 3 years of credit in math to graduate high school. So I have 3 students right now who are 2/3 of the way toward their requirement for high school math credits before they're even done with 8th grade. Now, you'll see the components of the requirements here. So they have to receive a C or better. They have to complete both semesters of the class, take the course through their middle school here, right? And they have to meet with me to talk about their courses taken and the credit being considered, at which point in time I get to probably break their heart and get booed and all of those kinds of things. Because my advice and the advice of their high school counselors is this: do not walk straight into high school next year and ask for that credit, right? I took algebra and geometry at Chappelow in 7th and 8th grade. Here's my transcript. I would like all of this credit applied for me, so I only have to take 1 year of math and be done with it, okay? I ask them to not do that, and their high school counselors will also remind them that I asked them not to do that for this reason. Once a class goes on a high school transcript, it cannot be removed. So once it goes there, it's there forever. And that might not seem like a big deal, except the way GPA gets figured. So any classes taken in middle school are figured on a 4.0 scale. There are AP classes, IB classes, things that are of that challenging level are figured on a 5-point scale, okay? Where an A is worth 5 points, a B is 4, okay? We're on a 4-point scale, an A is 4 points, a B is worth 3, okay? To figure GPA, we take all of your points, we add them up, we divide them by the number of classes you have taken, and that's how we figure your GPA. So the more 4.0 classes you have on your transcript against 5-point classes, it tends to skew that GPA down, okay? And we're not talking about a lot. We're literally talking about like 0.01 points on a GPA, which is not a huge deal, except if your student is going to apply for some really competitive scholarships, like I think about the Betcher or the Daniels Fund. I mean, we're talking about scholarships that pay for books, fees, living expenses, sometimes a living stipend for all 4 years to any college or university your child chooses. They have very competitive requirements. There are certain colleges and universities that have very competitive requirements. I think about Ivy League schools have really top tier expectations for admissions. And what I would hate to happen, right? Again, good surprise, bad surprise. Your student gets to that point later on, junior, senior year, when they're applying to college or they're applying for scholarships, and they transcribed the algebra and that geometry their freshman year of high school. And now their GPA is in such a position that it is 0.01 points off from being eligible for that scholarship or for that admission to that school they really want to attend. That is a bad surprise. So what we recommend is that the students wait. That credit is theirs until the end of December, their senior year. Okay, so anything that they want to transcribe needs to be transcribed by the end of their first semester senior year. They can go in at that point in time and put it on their transcript. That could free them up in their last semester of high school to be able to go to UNC almost all day and take college classes, right? Because maybe they only have one other class they need to take towards graduation on a high school campus. Or I had a student tell me one time, I'm going to transcribe at Mrs. Fay because what I want to be able to do is sleep till noon. Cool, dude, like whatever your motivation is for transcribing, that works for me. But we ask that they wait to do that until then. They'll know where they're going to school. They'll know if they can apply for that scholarship, be eligible for that scholarship by that point in time. And so there's really no negative consequence at that point in time to transcribing that credit. It just potentially opens them up to do other things inside of that last semester of their senior year. Or, you know, if they know earlier than that, you know, sometimes kids know by the end of junior year, I'm not going to do any of those things. I don't care about any of that stuff. I know what I need and I'm going to have it no matter what. And they go in and they transcribe it. But we ask them to wait until, you know, really junior, senior year to make that decision so that they know there won't be any negative consequences to making that decision that are not foreseeable when they are freshmen. And so if they roll into their high school next year and they go into their freshman counselor and they say, I want this credit, we've all agreed to the same thing, which is those counselors are going to say, didn't Mrs. Fay warn you about the consequences? At which point in time, I sincerely hope they remember our conversation and say, oh yes, I do remember that, okay? And heed that warning so that they don't end up in that situation. It's a really easy thing to do later on. The high schools send me a form. I sign off that they successfully completed it, attach a middle school transcript and send it back to the high school. It takes like 3 minutes. It's not difficult or complicated in any way. And so that is something we can do very, very easily at that point in time, if that's something that fits for your student. Okay. That is it, my friends. And just barely over time, which is really quite impressive if you consider some of the technical challenges at the very beginning of our time together today. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you leave, if you're like me and you leave and you're thinking about this and that's when the questions come, or you're discussing this with your kiddo later or your significant other later and you have questions, emailing me is the best way to do that. I respond much faster by email than I do to voicemail, just because I'm very frequently not in my office to be able to be on the phone. And so email is usually the fastest way to reach me if you have those questions. Like I said, your kiddos will be getting all of this information from me on Monday. So you may want to wait to talk with them about it in detail until Monday night or Tuesday, so that they've had the opportunity to get the information you just got. That way you're all working from the same set of information. So I'll hang out here for a little bit. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I just popped into the chat. I don't see anything in there at the moment. So I'll hang out here if you have questions for me. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time today. I hope you all are well and that I get to see you in person sometime soon. Thanks.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Lizette, I'm going to end the interpretation channel since it's just the three of us. And then if there's questions, we can just do that live together. How about that?
Josué, ¿tiene alguna pregunta?
No.
Ok, recuerde que me puede llamar a mí o puede
Sí.
hablar con Mrs. Space y en algún futuro, después de que hable con su estudiante, tiene alguna pregunta.